Behind the corporate Valtha, Iron Mask Victoria, Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching the city sprawl beneath her like a conquered kingdom. At 34, she commanded a tech empire worth billions, her name whispered in boardrooms with equal parts fear and admiration. The late afternoon sun cast sharp shadows across her angular features, highlighting the determined set of her jaw that had become her trademark in business magazines. Her reflection in the glass showed what the world expected to see: a woman. Dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, not a strand out of place. The Sterling Industries logo gleamed behind her, a monument to her ruthless climb to the top of the corporate ladder. She had built this empire with calculated precision, crushing competitors and acquiring smaller companies like a predator, consuming its prey. "Miss Sterling, the board meeting is in 10 minutes. Isabella Chen's soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Victoria's personal assistant stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, her expression carefully neutral. Isabella had worked for Victoria for 3 years, longer than most employees could tolerate the demanding pace and exacting standards. Victoria turned from the window, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she moved to her desk. "Cancel my dinner with the Japanese investors? Reschedule for tomorrow morning instead." Her voice carried the crisp authority that had become second nature, each word measured and deliberate. Isabella's fingers flew across her tablet, but Victoria caught the slight furrow in her brow. "Ma'am, they flew in specifically for tonight's meeting. Mr. Tanaka seemed quite insistent about the timing." "Then Mr. Tanaka will learn to be more flexible," Victoria replied, sliding papers into her briefcase with practiced efficiency. "I have other commitments tonight." The truth was, Victoria had no business commitments that evening. No client dinners, no strategy sessions, no corporate events that required her presence. What she had was something far more precious and dangerous: time that belonged entirely to her. Away from the suffocating expectations of her public persona, 3 floors below, in the Sterling Industries parking garage, Cameron Ross sat in his weathered Honda Civic, camera equipment scattered across the passenger seat. The investigative journalist had been tracking Victoria Sterling's movements for weeks, convinced that the tech mogul's carefully curated public image hid something significant. His editor at the financial magazine had initially dismissed his hunch, but Cameron's instincts had served him well in the past. There were too many inconsistencies in Victoria's schedule, too many evenings that remained unaccounted for in her otherwise meticulously documented life. Her social media presence showed board meetings and industry conferences, but never personal moments. Her dating life was non-existent in the public eye, leading to speculation about her sexuality that she neither confirmed nor denied. Most intriguingly, there were reports from building security about strange music coming from her penthouse apartment late at night. Cameron adjusted his camera lenses. Victoria's black Tesla emerged from the executive parking level. He had followed this routine for 12 consecutive evenings. Watching her leave the office between 6 and 7, always alone, always with the same mysterious destination, her penthouse, apartment building on the Upper East Side. But tonight felt different somehow. Tonight, he was determined to learn what Victoria Sterling did when she thought no one was watching. The penthouse elevator required a special key card, but Cameron had done his homework. A generous tip to the building's maintenance staff had revealed that the elevator shaft extended 1 floor higher than the listed penthouse level, a hidden floor that didn't appear on any building plans. The same maintenance worker had mentioned seeing dance equipment delivered to that mysterious floor several months ago, though he'd been sworn to secrecy about it. Victoria stepped out of the elevator onto the 68th floor, her shoulders immediately dropping as the familiar scent of the space enveloped her. This was her sanctuary, a world away from the corporate battlefield below. The hidden floor had been renovated into something that would shock anyone who knew her public persona: a professional dance studio complete with mirrors, bars, and state-of-the-art sound system. She set down her briefcase and began the transformation that no one else was permitted to witness. The severe business suit came off first, replaced by form-fitting leggings and a flowing top that allowed for movement. Her hair fell in dark waves past her shoulders as she removed the pins that held her corporate mask in place. In the mirror, she could see the woman she kept hidden from the world, softer, more vulnerable, but also more alive than the calculating executive everyone knew. The music began with a single piano note, haunting and beautiful. Victoria closed her eyes and let the melody wash over her, feeling the tension of the day slowly dissolve. When she began to move, it was with a grace and fluidity that would have been impossible to imagine in the boardroom. Her body spoke a language that had nothing to do with profit margins or market share, expressing emotions she had spent years learning to suppress. This was her secret, more closely guarded than any corporate strategy or financial information. Victoria Sterling, the ice queen of the tech world, was a passionate dancer who had trained classically since childhood, before business school and family expectations had forced her to abandon her dreams. But in this hidden studio, with only the city lights as witnesses, she could still be the woman she might have been. Isabella sat in her own apartment across town, staring at her laptop screen with growing unease. She had been Victoria's assistant, long enough to notice patterns, and lately, those patterns had been shifting in ways that made her nervous. The canceled meetings, the mysterious evening appointments that weren't in any official calendar. The way Victoria seemed almost eager to leave the office each night, as someone who had dedicated her career to protecting Victoria's interests. Isabella felt torn between loyalty and curiosity. She had access to most of Victoria's private information, but there were gaps, blocks of time that remained unaccounted for, expenses that didn't match any known business activities. Part of her wondered if Victoria was having some kind of breakdown, the pressure of running $1 billion company finally taking its toll. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I know about the 68th floor. We should talk." The sender identified himself as Cameron Ross, a journalist who wanted to discuss Victoria's after-hours activities. Isabella's blood ran cold as she realized that someone had been watching her boss, possibly for weeks. Next morning would bring new challenges and difficult decisions. Victoria's carefully constructed world was about to collide with the reality of scrutiny, and neither she nor Isabella was prepared for the consequences. But for now, in the safety of her hidden studio, Victoria continued to dance, unaware that her most closely guarded secret was already beginning to unravel. The city lights twinkled below as she spun across the polished floor, lost in a world where quarterly reports and corporate battles didn't exist. Here she was simply a woman, reconnecting with the part of herself she had been forced to sacrifice for success. The irony wasn't lost on her. In building her empire, she had become a prisoner of her own making, able to find freedom only in these stolen moments of authentic self-expression. The secret studio dancing, Shadow's Gabriel Martinez, arrived at the Sterling building just as the evening rush began to thin. The 31-year-old dancer moved through the lobby with the fluid grace that had made him one of the most sought-after choreographers in the city. His appointment tonight was unlike any other in his career. A private session with a client who paid triple his usual rates for absolute discretion and after hours. Access to a studio that officially didn't exist. He had been teaching Victoria Sterling for 6 months now, ever since she had appeared at his downtown studio one evening, wearing dark sunglasses and offering cash for private lessons with no questions asked. Gabriel had initially assumed she was another wealthy socialite looking for a hobby, but her first movements on the dance floor had revealed something entirely different, raw talent that had been suppressed, but never forgotten. The elevator climbed silently to the hidden 68th floor, and Gabriel felt the familiar anticipation that came with these sessions. Working with Victoria challenged him in ways his other students never did. Beneath her carefully controlled exterior lay a passion for movement that bordered on desperate, as if dance was the only thing keeping some essential part of her alive. Victoria was already warming up when he entered the studio, her body moving through a series of stretches with practiced precision. She had changed from her business attire into fitted dance, where that revealed the lean muscles she maintained. Despite her demanding schedule, her hair flowed freely around her shoulders, and without the armor of her corporate uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "You're early tonight," Gabriel observed, setting down his bag and beginning his own warm-up routine. He had learned not to comment on her schedule, or ask personal questions. But he noticed everything, the tension she carried in her shoulders after difficult board meetings, the way her movements became more fluid as the week progressed, the hunger in her eyes when she watched him demonstrate complex combinations. "I needed to escape," Victoria admitted, a rare moment of honesty that surprised them both. She had been fighting with her board all afternoon about a potential merger that would require her to spend months in Tokyo. Time that would mean abandoning these precious evening sessions. The thought of returning to a life without this outlet felt suffocating. Gabriel nodded, understanding more than she realized. He had worked with enough dancers to recognize when someone was using movement as medicine, as a way to heal parts of themselves that words couldn't reach. "What do you want to work on tonight? Something new?" Victoria said, moving to stand closer to him than their usual professional distance allowed. "Something that requires trust." The air between them shifted, charged with an energy that had been building for weeks. Gabriel had maintained strict professional boundaries despite the obvious attraction that sparked during their sessions. Victoria Sterling was not just any client. She was one of the most powerful women in the country, and any relationship between them could destroy both their careers. But tonight, something was different in her eyes, the controlled mask she wore. Even during their private sessions had slipped, revealing a woman who was tired of living her life according to other people's expectations. "To partner work," Gabriel said carefully, his voice slightly rougher than usual. "It requires complete trust between dancers. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Victoria stepped closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I've been ready for months. The question is whether you trust me enough to let go of whatever's been holding you back." Gabriel's professional resolve crumbled as he looked into her eyes and saw not the calculating business executive, but a woman who had been starving for authentic connection. His hands found her waist, and he felt her sharp intake of breath at the contact. "Then let's dance," he whispered. The music began with a sultry Latin rhythm that seemed to pulse through their bodies. Gabriel guided Victoria through movements that required them to maintain almost constant physical contact, his hands on her hips as she executed turns. Her body pressed against his during lifts, their faces inches apart during dramatic dips. Victoria had never experienced anything like the intensity of partner dancing with someone who understood both the technical and emotional aspects of movement. Every touch sent electricity through her skin. Every shared breath created a connection she had never allowed herself to experience. In Gabriel's arms, she felt both completely safe and wildly alive. "You're holding back," Gabriel murmured, during a pause in the music, his hands still resting on her waist. "I can feel it in your body. You're afraid to let go completely. I've spent 15 years learning to control every aspect of my life." Victoria replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Letting go isn't something I do easily." "Dance isn't about control," Gabriel said, one hand moving to cup her face gently. "It's about surrender. It's about trusting your partner to catch you when you fall." Their lips met in a kiss that was both inevitable and earth-shattering. Victoria had kissed other people before, but never with her entire being engaged the way it was now. Gabriel's mouth moved against hers, with the same fluid grace he brought to dance, and she felt herself melting into him in a way that terrified and thrilled her. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. The studio suddenly felt smaller, more intimate, filled with possibilities that neither had dared to acknowledge before. "This is dangerous," Victoria said, though she made no move to step away from him. "The most beautiful dances always are," Gabriel replied, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "The question is whether you're brave enough to see where this leads." Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Cameron Ross sat in a coffee shop, scrolling through the photos he had managed to capture through the building's windows. His telephoto lens had caught glimpses of movement on the mysterious 68th floor, enough to confirm that Victoria Sterling was indeed hiding something significant in that space. The images were blurry and taken from a distance, but they clearly showed a woman who looked like Victoria engaged in what appeared to be dance or physical training. More intriguingly, several photos showed a second figure, a man whose identity Cameron was determined to discover. His investigation had taken on new urgency after Isabella Chen had agreed to meet with him earlier that day. Victoria's assistant had been reluctant to share information, but her obvious concern for her boss had led her to reveal certain details about Victoria's altered behavior and mysterious evening activities. She's not herself lately, Isabella had confided over coffee, her usual composure cracking slightly. She's distracted during meetings, almost eager to leave the office each night. And there are expenses I can't account for, payments to someone named Gabriel Martinez. Cameron had already started researching Gabriel Martinez and discovered he was a professional dancer and choreographer with an impressive resume. The pieces were beginning to form a picture that would shock the business world if proven true. Victoria Sterling, the ice queen of corporate America, was secretly taking dance lessons. But there was more to the story. Cameron was certain. The intensity he had glimpsed in those distant photographs suggested something beyond a simple hobby. There was an intimacy in the body language that spoke of a relationship that had moved far beyond professional instruction. Back in the studio, Victoria and Gabriel had resumed dancing, but their movements now carried a new intensity. Every lift, every spin, every moment of contact was charged with the electricity of their mutual attraction. Gabriel choreographed sequences that required Victoria to trust him completely, dramatic lifts that left her suspended in his arms, spins that would send her falling if he weren't there to catch her. "I haven't felt this alive in years," Victoria confessed during a break. Her body pressed against Gabriel's as they caught their breath. "In the boardroom, I'm always performing, always calculating my next move. But here with you, I can just be." Gabriel's response was to kiss her again, deeper this time, his hands tangling in her hair. When they parted, he looked into her eyes with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Stay tonight," he said simply. "Let me show you what it means to truly let go." Victoria knew that crossing this line would change everything. Her carefully constructed life was built on control and distance, on never allowing anyone close enough to threaten her position or discover her vulnerabilities. Surrounded by mirrors that reflected infinite versions of their embrace, she realized she was tired of living a half-life. "Yes," she whispered, and felt something inside her chest unfurl like a flower finally receiving sunlight. The city lights sparkled beyond the studio windows as Victoria Sterling, for the first time in her adult life, chose passion over pragmatism. In Gabriel's arms, she discovered not just physical desire, but the intoxicating freedom of being completely herself with another person. Their dance had become something much more profound, a conversation between souls that had been searching for each other without realizing it. As the evening dissolved into night, Victoria understood that tomorrow would bring complications she couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, she was simply a woman in love, dancing in the arms of a man who saw her not as a corporate titan, but as a beautiful, complex human being deserving of tenderness and passion. The secret studio had become a sanctuary not just for her hidden talent, but for a love that would soon challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and what she was willing to risk for happiness. The revelation: when worlds collide, the morning sun cast long shadows across Victoria's penthouse bedroom as she woke in Gabriel's arms for the first time. Their night together had been a revelation of passion and tenderness that left her feeling both exhilarated and terrified. Gabriel's dark hair was tousled against the white pillows, his face peaceful in sleep. And Victoria allowed herself a moment to simply watch him breathe. Their lovemaking had been unlike anything she had ever experienced.
Gabriel approached intimacy
with the same artistry he brought to dance, reading her body's responses like music, building tension and release with expert precision. When she had finally surrendered completely to his touch, the intensity had left her trembling and transformed. But as the reality of daylight crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Victoria felt the familiar weight of her responsibilities settling back onto her shoulders. In a few hours, she would need to transform back into the steel-willed executive who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals. The woman who had writhed beneath Gabriel's passionate caresses would have to disappear behind the corporate mask once again. Gabriel stirred beside her, his eyes opening to meet hers with a warmth that made her heart skip. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to her shoulder. "It is, isn't it?" Victoria replied, surprising herself with the contentment in her voice. She had never been one for morning-after conversations, preferring to maintain distance even in her rare personal relationships. Vulnerability felt natural rather than dangerous. Their peaceful moment was shattered by the sharp buzz of Victoria's phone. Isabella's name flashed on the screen along with a message that made Victoria's blood run cold. Emergency. Cameron Ross has photos. He's threatening to publish unless you agree to an exclusive interview. We need to talk immediately. Gabriel felt Victoria's body tense against his and sat up, immediately alert. What is it? Victoria's mind was already racing through damage control scenarios, calculating the potential fallout from public exposure of their relationship. Someone's been watching us. Journalist has evidence about the studio, about you. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Gabriel had always known this moment might come, but he had hoped they would have more time to figure out how to navigate the complexities of their situation. What do you want to do? Gabriel asked, his voice carefully neutral. He had been in relationships with high-profile clients before, though none as powerful or as secretive as Victoria. He knew that when publicity threatened, the famous partner usually chose to protect their reputation over their lover. Victoria looked into his eyes and saw not expectation or demand, but simply acceptance of whatever decision she would make. The realization that Gabriel was prepared to lose her to protect her reputation made her heart ache with an emotion she was still learning to name. I want to fight for this, she said, surprising them both with the fierce determination in her voice. For us. An hour later, Victoria sat across from Cameron Ross in a private dining room at the city's most exclusive hotel. She had chosen the location carefully, neutral ground where the conversation could be honest without compromising either of their positions. Isabella sat beside her, tablet ready, while Cameron had arrived alone with a briefcase full of evidence. You've been thorough, Victoria acknowledged, flipping through the photographs Cameron had managed to capture. Despite the distance and difficult lighting conditions, the images clearly showed her and Gabriel in intimate embraces within the studio. What exactly do you want? Cameron leaned back in his chair, studying the woman across from him. In person, Victoria Sterling was even more formidable than her reputation suggested. But he could see something different in her eyes today, a softness that hadn't been there in any of her public appearances.
Oh, yes.
I want the truth, Cameron said. Simply, the real story behind these photos. Who is Gabriel Martinez to you? Why are you hiding a dance studio? What does this mean for Sterling Industries and your investors? Victoria felt the familiar urge to deflect, to construct a narrative that would minimize the scandal and protect her business interests. But looking at Cameron's earnest face, she realized she was tired of living behind carefully constructed lies. Gabriel is the man I love, she said quietly, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. The studio is where I remember who I was before I became who everyone expected me to be. As for my investors, they'll have to decide whether they can accept a CEO who refuses to apologize for being human. Isabella's sharp intake of breath was audible, but she remained professionally silent. This was not the damage control strategy they had discussed during the hurried car ride to the hotel. Cameron's expression shifted from adversarial to genuinely curious. You're not going to deny it? Try to spin this as a fitness routine or stress? Management? I could, Victoria replied, her voice growing stronger with each word. I could pay you enough to bury this story, or hire lawyers to tie you up in court until your magazine loses interest. But I won't. I'm tired of pretending that. Success requires sacrificing every part of yourself that makes life worth living. The journalist in Cameron recognized a better story than the simple scandal he had initially pursued. This was about more than a billionaire's secret hobby. It was about a woman choosing authenticity over image, love over fear. Tell me about Gabriel, Cameron said, pulling out his recorder. How did you meet? When did you know this was more than just dance lessons? Victoria's face softened as she spoke about their first meeting, about the way Gabriel had seen through her corporate armor to the dancer she had buried beneath years of business school and board meetings. She talked about the freedom she found in movement, about the connection she felt with Gabriel that went far beyond physical attraction. He sees me, she concluded simply. Not Sterling Industries' stock price or my net worth or my reputation, just me, and he loves what he sees. Meanwhile, Gabriel paced his downtown studio, preparing for the conversation he knew would come. Victoria, had texted him about the meeting with Cameron Ross, and he understood that their relationship was about to become very public very quickly. His phone buzzed with calls from Dance World contacts, who had somehow already heard rumors. But he ignored them all. The studio door chimed, and Gabriel looked up to see Victoria entering with an expression he had never seen before. Peaceful. Determination mixed with nervous excitement. "How did it go?" he asked, crossing to her immediately. "I told him everything," Victoria said, stepping into his arms. "About us. About what this means to me. About how I'm not willing to give up the best thing in my life to protect an image that was slowly killing me anyway." Gabriel held her tightly, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "And the consequences?" "There will be some," Victoria admitted. "The board will probably demand my resignation. Some investors will panic. The media will have a field day with the Ice Queen, who melts for a dance teacher." "I'm sorry," Gabriel said, guilt heavy in his voice. "This is all my fault. If I had maintained better boundaries, if I hadn't fallen in love with you." Victoria silenced him with a kiss that was fierce and claiming. "Don't you dare apologize. For being the best thing that's ever happened to me. I made my choice with full knowledge of the risks." Their embrace was interrupted by the arrival of Isabella, who had been handling the immediate crisis management since leaving the hotel. "Story breaks online in 2 hours," she announced, her professional composure intact despite the chaos. Cameron Ross is positioning it as a humanizing piece rather than a scandal, which helps. But we need to prepare for the board's reaction and have a statement ready for the media. Victoria nodded, then turned to Gabriel with a question that would determine their future. "Are you prepared for this? For having your life scrutinized? For being known as the man who brought down Victoria Sterling's reputation?" Gabriel's answer came without hesitation. "I'm prepared for anything, as long as we face it together." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of phone calls, emergency meetings, and media preparation. True to Cameron's word, his article portrayed Victoria's story as one of personal courage rather than corporate scandal. The headline read, "The Dance of Authenticity: How Victoria Sterling Chose Love Over Image." The business world's reaction was swift and predictable. Sterling Industries' stock price dropped 12% in after-hours trading. 3 board members called for emergency meetings. Competitors began circling like vultures, sensing weakness in the tech giant's leadership. But there were surprises. 2. Several prominent female executives publicly supported Victoria's choice to prioritize personal happiness. Young entrepreneurs tweeted about the importance of work-life balance. Dance studios across the country reported increased enrollment from business professionals seeking their own forms of authentic expression. As evening fell, Victoria and Gabriel stood together in their secret studio, now secret no longer. The space that had once been their private sanctuary would soon be photographed and analyzed by media outlets around the world. "Do you regret it?" Gabriel asked, watching Victoria's reflection in the mirrors that had witnessed their love story unfold. Victoria considered the question seriously. Her carefully constructed corporate empire was shaking. Her reputation as an untouchable business icon was forever changed. The life she had spent 15 years building was transforming in ways she couldn't control. But as she looked at Gabriel's face, at the love and acceptance she saw there, she knew her answer with absolute certainty. "Never," she said, moving into his arms as music began to play. "This is who I really am. It just took falling in love with you to remember." They danced together as the city lights sparkled below them, no longer hiding from the world but celebrating their love openly. Victoria Sterling had chosen passion over pragmatism, authenticity over image, and in doing so had discovered that true power came not from controlling every aspect of her life, but from having the courage to be vulnerable with the right person. The future remained uncertain. The business world would continue to judge and speculate. But in Gabriel's arms, moving to music that spoke to her soul, Victoria had found something more valuable than any corporate achievement she had found herself. She had found love. There, dance continued long into the night, a celebration of choosing heart over fear, of 2 souls who had found in each other the missing pieces that made them whole. The secret was out. but the real story was just beginning.